Photo of Sara drinking a cup of tea. Photo of Sara smiling. Seeing with Sara logo. Seeing with Sara is a virtual series hosted by Empowerment through Integration and developed as a co-creation between ETI and ETI's founder, Sara Minkara.
Hi everyone, my name is Sara Minkara and welcome to another episode with Seeing with Sara. So today I'm going to talk about a really important topic about inclusive education. Education is one of the main tools of empowerment for everyone, right? It allows you to really create the skills to move forward in your life and create a life of value, independence, and contribution. But unfortunately, not every single school system is fully inclusive, and not everyone really understands what does inclusive education means. And it's a learning, it's a journey for all of us, and we're all learning and we're always improving on how do we make sure the education system is inclusive for all. And I think that there's two aspects to it. There's one is how do we make sure infrastructure, everything is accessible for students with disabilities? How do we make sure that from a technical lens, the school system is being intentional of making sure every single student has the right tools and resources to access the school fully? And it's so important for students to really, schools to really realize that accessibility and accommodation is individualistic. You cannot generalize and say, just because this person is blind and this person has these accommodations, this second person who's blind should have exactly the same accommodations. But that's why in the US, there's something called the IEP, where you develop a plan to make sure the accessibility and the accommodations are tailored to the kids' needs. But a lot of times we still generalize. And I think it's so important for us to remove that mindset of cookie cutter, right? And really look at each kid individually as a human with different needs. And that's for everyone. That's for any kid, right? And the more we do that, the more then kids don't fall through the crack. But I want to take a step further and say that it's, through my travels across the world, I've seen schools say, oh, we're inclusive. And then what ends up happening is that they do have students with disabilities, but they're just in separate classes. And that's not true inclusion. True inclusion is where kids are mainstreamed and classrooms have kids and without kids with disabilities, and everyone's able to fully contribute. I think it's really important for us to look at examples of successful schools that have been able to achieve that. One of them here in Boston is called the Henderson School. It's in Dorchester, and the former principal, Bill Henderson, who is blind, he's the one that really made a difference and came in and really shaped things up. And it's one of the best schools ever when it comes to inclusive education. It's so important for us to really make sure that the school, from teachers to staff to administrative to even the students, are trained with this mindset that we want these students with disabilities, we want to include them, they have a value to contribute. And when teachers are trained through that lens, and also when teachers are trained and empowered to say, you know what, it's not that impossible. Here are some tools, here's our resources, here's how you can be inclusive. It's all about wanting, and when you want and you have the support, then you're able to, as a teacher, include students with disabilities. But it's a combination of mindset, I want, second, have the support from the school, and third, resources. Now, one thing that keeps on coming up through my travels and through whether here in the US or across the globe is, financially, resources, we don't have the resources to really accommodate for students with disabilities. And here's what I will say, that might be true, which is, yes, there's limitations, but I think it's so important for us to be creative and use design thinking, innovation, and positive deviation as a way to really come up with creative, localized, low-cost solutions to include students with disabilities. And there's so many ways of being creative, so many ways. You don't need the most high-tech technology out there to be able to teach math to a blind, visually impaired student. You don't need, so there are ways to be creative in low cost and localized solutions. So I think it's through the training of teachers, it's so important for teachers to be equipped with that mindset and that way of thinking and those tools and those resources. We're so far from being there, and I've seen it through my college experience, through my grad school experience, in visiting different schools. Again, I say teachers and schools have the right intentions, but what ends up happening is it's either that there's fear of not having enough resources, or not having the right priorities in place, and not knowing how. And I think we need to start mitigating those gaps by having more of these conversations and having schools reach out and say, how can I want to. I always say I've had amazing teachers growing up. One of them is my pre-calc teacher in high school, who was so supportive, and she was never taught how to teach a blind kid, but she was willing to learn and was very accommodating. Another, my chemistry teacher as well in high school. So I've had amazing teachers, and because of them, I was able to really pursue my passions. So let's keep on creating more schools and empower more teachers and even students to be more inclusive. As I say, no matter what resources are thrown at me, if I didn't feel like I was welcome in a school, I wouldn't be able to fully engage, right? So let's make sure the environment is welcoming. Let's make sure students and students with and without disabilities want to learn from each other. Let's make sure teachers are equipped with the right mindset and resources and tools to be accommodating and inclusive and welcoming. And yeah, let's take this forward. This impacts all of us. Whether we are kids, parents, teachers, siblings, let's really try to impact the school that we are connected with and make sure it has kids with disabilities. Always ask, does the school have kids with disabilities? Is it inclusive? And if yes, how? So if you can comment below, what does inclusive education mean to you, and where have you seen it be done really well? Please follow us on social media and stay tuned with another episode with Seeing with Sara in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow ATI on social media. Instagram, ati.vision. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, ATI Vision. Follow Sara Minkara. LinkedIn, Sara Minkara. Instagram, Sara.s.minkara. Facebook, Sara.minkara.1. Twitter, Minkara Sara. Seeing with Sara logo. Credits. Production, ETI, Empowerment Through Integration. Host, Sara Minkara. Executive Producer, Ana Barbosa, Cara Cochino. Assistant Producer, Nicolette Capiello. Post-Production, Bacoli Media.